Well, every 4 years, presidential hopefuls want voters to focus on their campaign promises and the faults of their adversaries. This can be especially difficult in a battleground state like Ohio, where, especially this time of year, the focus is football. So during his road trip to contentious swing states ahead of the election, CBS This Morning co-host Tony Dokoupil visited the suburb of Kettering, Ohio. There he found himself at the crossroads of America's passion and America's future.
From the moment we arrived at a youth flag football game here, it was pretty clear. People have been watching the news.
Tony Dokoupil.
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
But how do they feel about talking politics?
We see a lot of signs for Trump. We see a lot of signs for Biden. And
If I was to have one, it would say presidents are temporary, Wu-Tang is forever.
One parent lingered, though, and as it turned out, Brandon Sock had a lot on his mind.
which of the two presidential candidates this year would you say will build a better America for these kids?
It's complicated because if you just take what you hear on a broad level, like I'm white, my son is African American. So which candidate best represents our family? That's a difficult question.
What is your decision going to come down to in these next few weeks?
For me, I have to balance how heavily I hold and cherish life. That's a buzzword, but my son's life matters. We've all talked about that. Everyone's heard that. But the life, whether it be before birth, after birth, I don't think it's a clear issue.
Are you an undecided voter then?
You could call it that.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that undecided voters really existed at this late stage in the election.
Yeah.
The shock of meeting an actual undecided voter was soon followed by a sting.
Looks like there's a piece.
That's me saying hello to a local Ohio honey worker.
Starting to swell up a little bit.
After some minor first aid, we made our way over to watch the Browns face off against the Cowboys.
Nice catch, Caden!
Tabitha Honecker West is almost as passionate in her support of President Trump as she is for her son Caden. And politically, that's a change from 2016.
I was taking more of a Democratic stance because I was in poverty.
Wow.
And let's go Browns! Oh, interception.
Yeah, that's trouble. There we go.
And I listened to my father and I voted for Trump, and I was proud that I did. And I think he's done us good. You know, he said some stupid things, but that's Trump.
Which helps explain why some people here told us they aren't thrilled with either of their options.
To me, it's not going to matter one way or the other.
You sound exhausted by politics.
I am. I'm very exhausted.
Too, yeah.
So I think that it's just a person that's representing the country. I don't think that anything's going to change.
But on that point, folks on the other side of the field differed.
The pandemic is taken over our lives, and it didn't have to be this way.
You don't like the division?
Yeah, I don't like the division, and I don't like what it's done to people. I mean, people are cutting other people out of their lives because of politics.
So it sounds like what you're both saying is to put the country on a better path, you like Joe Biden.
Yes.
You're
yes.
hesitant to do
Well, you know, I know this is going to be on TV, and I don't necessarily want people to, because I'm friends with people on both sides, and I don't ever want that to be an issue. With people. I wish it was a better situation, but you know, I think that we definitely need change. That's all I can say, really.
So
right.
Tony is joining us now from Columbus, Ohio. Tony, meeting people on the gridiron. You found a unicorn, because I too did not think there was an undecided voter available at all. But I think, you know, the thing about candidates, people talk issues, and then there's this idea of just how you feel about the person. You know, it's that whole, like, would you want to have a beer with them? And I'm curious, when you spoke to voters on the ground, especially with all this sort of kind of bad blood that is going around with politics, how do they just feel about the candidates? How do they view these candidates?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Anne-Marie. You know, I will say that having spoken to a good number of Joe Biden supporters and Donald Trump supporters at this point, the Joe Biden supporters do tend to be more analytical in their list of reasons why they're voting for Joe Biden. By and large, the Donald Trump supporters will tell you that it's just a feeling that his style works for them. He's fighting for the right reasons and the right causes, even if he's not necessarily getting things done that he said he would get done, like an infrastructure plan, like repealing the Affordable Care Act, things that were said that were going to happen that didn't. They still feel in their gut that Donald Trump is fighting for people like them. And I think that feeling is why in all three of the states that we are visiting on this road trip, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, you have Donald Trump doing well in 2016 and likely again in 2020. These states are much whiter and less well-educated than the American population as a whole. A majority of the voters, this is what I mean by that, the majority of the voters in each of these states are white Americans without a college degree. And they broke for President Trump 2-1 in 2016. If they do that again, or if he even improves on that record because of that feeling that people have, it's going to be very hard for Joe Biden to win the White House and win these states.
So staying on that thread, Tony, I wonder if the messaging that the campaigns use against each other is actually sticking. For example, do people who support President Trump believe, if you listen to the president, if you follow his tweets, that Joe Biden is the most corrupt politician ever to grace Washington? Do they believe that Joe Biden is a crime boss in the way that President Trump has indicated on his social media? And conversely, do people who support Biden believe that Trump is a misogynist or that Trump uses racist dog whistles? I'm just trying to get a sense of when it comes down to making a decision, if it really is about the economy, if it really is about who is best suited to manage COVID-19, or if it's because they believe that one guy is more corrupt than the other.
Well, so in politics in this country, we are in a kind of fact-free environment, and the proof of that is that Donald Trump's approval rating among Republicans in the Gallup poll that came out in late September was 94%. That is some tribal thinking. That is near an all-time high for him and one of the highest on record. His approval rating, in contrast, among Democrats, only 7%. So the gap between the Republican approval of the president and the Democrat, and that gulf is wider, according to Pew, actually, than it's ever been in the history of modern polling. That's going back to the late 1930s. So when you have that kind of polling divide, that means that people are tribal in their thinking. And so regardless of what the kind of evidence that might fly in a courtroom or in a scientific study has to say, they're going to believe what the other people in their tribe are saying. And so, yes, staunch Republicans and staunch supporters of President Trump think Joe Biden is senile, corrupt, and intends to ban fracking, for example. And on the flip side, the staunchest supporters of Joe Biden, or subset of them, those who dislike the president the most, think that you can't believe a word that he has to say, that he lacks empathy, that he's in cahoots with who knows what foreign government. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, we like to imagine that elections are the result of sober analysis around the kitchen table, where the family gathers and says, who should we vote for this year? Well, who's better for us? And they make a little like T chart on a yellow legal pad. It doesn't happen that way out here in real life.
Yeah, really fascinating, Tony. I could really see in the interview that you did with that young father, sort of the struggle that he was sort of playing over in his mind. You know, on one hand you got this, and on the other hand you've got that, and you could sort of see how there are still those unicorns, as Gail called them, that are out there, people who haven't really made up their minds, and they've got 2 weeks to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Brian's Sock, I believe his name was. He is a white father with an adopted black son, who he clearly adores. And he also is clearly pro-life, so he's opposed to abortion rights. So he's thinking simultaneously about the rights of the unborn as he conceives of them, and also life after birth, Black Lives Matter in the person of his son. And those two ideas are in competition in his mind, and they represent two different candidates. So that 7% of Americans who are not decided yet, they exist, and he's a great example of it. If I had to guess, I think he's going to vote for Donald Trump, though, because I think he's hopeful that the president will satisfy both of his interests in 2020.
Well, the president will have satisfied the interests that he has with regards to abortion because he has nominated Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who many assume will, is pro-life. In fact, Lindsey Graham, in closing out the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, said this is the first time we've ever had a woman who's a pro-life judge who is going to be nominated to the Supreme Court. The jury's still out.
Well, so the jury is still out. However, Brian feels like there's a lot of show and performance that the president engages in. He says a lot of things, but he doesn't believe that that's actually what's in his heart. So if you separate out the show, maybe you come to a different conclusion about the president's beliefs about Black America, for example. So, I mean, it's a good illustration of what you were talking about earlier, where are people going off the evidence that they see with their eyes or something else that's more of a gut level? And I think Brian is going with the gut level. I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's what he seemed to be leaning based on the totality of the conversation with him. But he's undecided.
And I think it also sort of points to the challenge of the single issue voter, when now over the last 4 years, so many single issues have become high stake issues. Healthcare is a high stakes issue in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, law enforcement has become a high stakes issue in the middle of reckoning over law enforcement and racism. And, once upon a time, you could just pick your issue and vote along that line. It's probably not so clear anymore for many people.
No, you're definitely right. I'm smiling not because of the subject matter, but because my trusty cameraman and producer Martin Finn here, who's had several long nights in a row, I can see his blinks becoming long closures of the eye, and I think he might fall asleep.
If we see a shot of the floor of the RV, Tony, we'll know that we put Martin Finn to sleep.
Man down.
But we thank him very much, and we thank you. Appreciate it, Tony.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.